Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healy with DevilsDigest.com.
Well, Sun Devils football has historically taken the years off the lives of many of its fans, and Saturday night was certainly no exception. But also, it seems to be adding to the growing legend of one, Sam Levitt.
Yeah, that game was something else. I think a lot of us walked out of Mountain America Stadium last weekend thinking, how in the world did ASU win that game? As we will break down, it really came down to just a few plays. ASU was outplayed, outgained, out a lot of things. But one thing they weren't outed was outscored with a victory over UCF to bring ASU to 7-2, rolling through this 2024 season. The magic that's been going on, that continued because you saw Cam Scadaboo out of action. And unless you count charging the team out of the tunnel, raising the American flag, which for me, you get something for that. That should boost his credibility in the Heisman race. But to be able to do that victory without your star running back, just another box to check on this impressive 2024 season. And ASU under Kenny Dillingham righting a lot of wrongs and doing things much differently than have been done in the past. And just keeping that magic alive for an exciting season in which ASU still technically alive in the Big 12 championship race. And if you're alive in that race, you're alive in the college football playoff race. These are facts that we can say right now.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to say. Like, it's mid-November, and just like we all foresaw, ASU's path to the college football playoff is still right there in front. Now, they might need some help, as we'll dive into maybe in next week's episode, as the picture becomes a little bit more clear. But yeah, ultimately, as Kenny said, good teams find a way, and ASU did not play well. Kenny said that they did not coach well. Things did not go well, except in the key moments when the Devils did just enough to get out a win and take down a pretty good UCF team. Now, it's going to be much more daunting this week to get another W to add to that total. But, as we've seen, Joe, this is a team that somehow finds a way. And we're going to be talking to a few key Sun Devils about how they found a way and how they're looking to find a way to slow down Kansas State. A little bit later on, we'll be joined by Justin Wodtly and Zach Swanson, a couple of D linemen in the trenches, as well as a new recruit, because ASU's not just winning games, they're winning on the recruiting trail in the last few days as well. Wide receiver, Chance Abels.
Yeah, a lot of news to share with you after that big victory over UCF. ASU is rolling in style right now, and if you want to be doing the same with the vehicle of your choice, you've got to contact Jones Auto Group. They need to be your first call, your only call when you're in the market for a new vehicle. Jones has been servicing the state of Arizona and the Sun Devil community for more than 50 years with multiple locations across the state. It is a fact. We tell you all the time. Jones Auto Group was the original provider of vehicles to Sun Devil student athletes for NIL purposes, and it is your support that enables them to continue to do that year after year. In addition to their unwavering support of Sun Devil athletics, Jones Auto Group offers unique tax advantages due to their dealership locations. Those can save you some big-time money. So it doesn't get any better than that when you're shopping for a new vehicle. You get to work with a fellow Sun Devil who will treat you like family and potentially set you up for some unique savings. So here's how you do it. If you don't have the number taken down by now, get your phone out, get a pen and paper, pencil, whatever, typewriter, I don't care what it is. Take down the number for Parker Jones, not just the owner and GM, but a third-generation ASU alum, and just like you, a die-hard Sun Devil fan. 602-881-8998. Again, 602-881-8998. Hit him up. Text him, call him. Give Parker a shout if you're in the market for a new vehicle. As we talked about last week, he sent us a bunch of autographed T-shirts by Raleek Brown, Sam Levitt, Jordan Tyson, the guys that he's got hooked up with vehicles. We're going to be giving those out over the rest of the season here, so keep an eye on our social media for that. But for now, you can browse the inventory of new and pre-owned vehicles at jonesautocenters.com. Jones Auto Group, Arizona's best since 1970.
All right, let's start with the most pressing topic here, the injuries. ASU, of course, was without arguably their top playmaker on both sides of the ball, running back Cam Scadaboo and linebacker Keyshawn Elliott. Now, on Monday, Kenny Dillingham deemed both of those guys questionable for this weekend's game at Kansas State. However, both were at practice today on Tuesday. Both participated. So there's that. Look promising. Guys are moving around pretty well. Offensive lineman Kyle Scott he practiced as well along that offensive line. He looks good to go.
Yeah, and that's obviously great news to get those guys back in the lineup at least for practice and create that encouragement that they might get out there on Saturday. Obviously, you want to have Scat back in the lineup. Kyson Brown did a solid job in place of him, but a guy like Scat, you just can't really replicate him. You got to get the original one out there, and I'm sure that he wants to get out there for this game. I know he was chomping at the bit. What did he tell Kenny, like in the third quarter, that he wanted to get in the game? I was thinking on like that last drive for ASU, and like, man, just suit him up for like one carry, because that's what he does, in those crunch time situations. I was expecting like a Willis Reed situation.
Yeah, just like that one carry that they need.
Just to get a first down, milk the clock before they had that play, which was a wise play where Sam, retreated and chucked it up in the air. But yeah, to be able to get Scat back would obviously be huge. Keyshawn Elliott, when you're going against a Kansas State team that runs the ball very well, both from the running back and quarterback position with a few different guys, you want to have all your weapons on defense out there. Kyle Scott, a guy who's quietly had a very solid season. Again, you want to be healthy with your starters in a game like this where there is a ton on the line, because, as we mentioned, ASU is legitimately still in the race for the Big 12 championship game. They need some help, and they definitely have to help themselves by continuing to win ball games, and getting some of these guys back in the lineup. That's what helps you do that.
Yeah, so we'll see exactly how much those guys are able to go the rest of the week and participate against, I believe, a team that's now, as of tonight, number 16 in the playoff rankings that have come out. So a stiff test, but so you want all hands on deck for that. But also got to be pretty smart if you're the coaching staff, because you got a home date against BYU and then the Territorial Cup. So some big games ahead for the Devils. But of course, after ASU had a big win, it's become custom, no Scat to win Offensive Player of the Week for the Big 12. But some other Sun Devils decide to jump in and snag some conference awards on their own right. First and foremost, got to give a huge shout out to linebacker Martell Hughes, the true freshman, Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Week, the first Sun Devil to win the conference Special Teams Player of the Week. Of course, had the huge block that resulted in the Montana Warren touchdown to get things going. But not only that, after we'll dive into this maybe a little bit later, the questionable decision by the UCF kick returner to bring that out. Hughes is right there on the spot to make the tackle, pinning them at the one that preceded Terrence Welsh's pick six.
Yeah, I mean, just huge stuff from Hughes. You love to see guys like that get in the action, get some accolades, especially someone who's a true freshman who's burned the red shirt, largely playing on special teams. He's gotten some action at linebacker as well. So you love to see that really add up to something. And this was a substantial something for him. If you don't block that punt and do what you did, and shout out to Montana Warren and the footwork that he had. If you watch the replay of that, like his momentum was kind of carrying him out of bounds, and he just stopped on a dime, shot up the sideline for 6. If that doesn't happen, I don't know if ASU wins that ball game. And those two plays alone, I mean, those were such tide-turning plays. I don't know that I will ever understand what was going on with that kick returner for UCF. But what is even less understandable is the decision that Dylan Risk made on the ensuing play. But these are good things in Sun Devil country. So yeah, great to see that, because it helps. I'm sure it gives these kids some major momentum and inspiration just to be able to contribute at this level. Again, a true freshman who's been out there every weekend, really getting some headlines and really influencing the outcome of a game. Stuff you love to see.
Yeah, he was early enrollee, participated in spring practice, and he was making his mark there. And as you watch him throughout the spring, he got more comfortable because he's a converted safety. So he's kind of learning the linebacker position on the fly. And then in fall camp, just continued to be, of course, with a lot of veterans in that group. He doesn't necessarily be thrust into the kind of the defensive responsibilities, but making his mark. Special teams is where young guys can really elevate their game, and obviously at this point, to seeing what they were able to do to change the face of a game and get ASU a big conference win was massive. He wasn't the only Sun Devil to get a Conference Player of the Week award. ASU quarterback Sam Levitt was named the Big 12 Newcomer of the Week. Now, it didn't set the world on fire with his stat line necessarily. Didn't have another 300-yard game like he did against Oklahoma State, but 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. And, maybe we'll get into this a little bit later, but each week as he's putting together more clutch moments, the Jake Plummer comparisons, I see that out there on social media, that chatter might be sacrilege still at this point, but it's growing.
Yeah, I mean, you can see his confidence growing by the game. It's a very different player, quite frankly, that we've seen these last couple games. than from earlier in the season. There's just a different comfort level. He's connecting better with receivers. Now then, obviously, there were some completions and yardage that were left on the field to no fault of Levitt's. There were those back-to-back plays to Tyson and Jake Smith, one of which was a more challenging than the other, and the Jake Smith pass just really should have been caught. So he did what he could do there. But then obviously just some incredible plays. Obviously that connection to Jordan Tyson to keep that drive alive was absolutely massive. He's just what we heard about in spring camp and what we've seen, throughout the year really coming to a head, just that connection between Sam and Jordan Tyson. So yeah, you've got to be happy, even if he's not lighting the world on fire with 300+ yardage games. It was an efficient game. It did not have catastrophic mistakes, didn't have the turnovers, and so those are stat lines that you'll take on a very regular basis, especially once you can get Scatterbo back in the lineup.
Fun fact, which might be depressing just on terms of what happened prior, but he now has 12 touchdown passes on the year, which is the most by a Sun Devil since 2019.
That is a really weird thing. Really weird thing, but it's good to have the positive side of it here in your lineup versus because they didn't even reach double digits as a team last year, right?
So.
I don't think
seven.
So. That number stands out as well, which is unfathomable. You get to that rock bottom, it's only up from here. 12, you feel like you're Patrick Mahomes or something like that.
Yeah, he's got at least 4 games to go. So yeah, he could pushing 20 would be like pretty remarkable.
My goodness.
School record's 30, by the way, so it's still there.
Is that really? Is it only just 30?
It is, yeah.
Is that Walter or Berkovich? Because I know Burko had some really good numbers that year that just was a forgettable year.
Burko has the 30 touchdowns, and I believe the only 4,000-yard passer is Osweiler.
Yep, in 2011. So yeah, these like grossly forgettable seasons compared to the expectations. So now this year's a little bit different, where you're flipping that around. And ASU, obviously, that win puts them. Just another thing that I've been keeping track on because I just want folks to see the forest for the trees is ASU's now +4 in the win column year over year. And there's only one team in the country as of right now that is doing better year over year, and that's Indiana because what they're doing is unbelievable. But that just puts into comparison, not only is ASU doing some really incredible stuff here in terms of just the local expectations and history, but you put that on a national scale, and this turnaround is as good as anybody, with that exception of just what Indiana is doing is absolutely incredible.
All right, so some quick notes on game times. Of course, this game against Kansas State was a 6-day hold, 5 p.m. If you haven't heard, you probably heard. I mean, you follow us on social media, TV on ESPN. But ASU's homecoming game, and is it is this the latest homecoming game? Because typically homecomings are like an October thing, right? So November 23rd, BYU is ASU's homecoming game. But I know you're probably a big fan of this, Joe. 1:30 kickoff.
And the first thing I thought about when I saw it in some of the reactions was the typical thing from our guy Jedi with the time, and it's always that gymnast with the smirk on her face. First on the homecoming point, I was wondering if that was going to be this past week, because the biggest thing for homecoming for me is that it affects the travel to the game. It makes it a little longer, a little more difficult to get in, which is fine, but you have the parade, which occupies university, for an extended period of time, and that's something that I've been blindsided in the past. I'm like, crap, this is going to take way longer to get to the game than it usually does, so I try to keep up on it. So for that to be your final home game is pretty wild. Yeah, that is beyond the scope of my knowledge, and to have those both. Okay, but you know what? When it's this matchup and it's the best opponent that you'll play at home, the highest ranked team that you'll play all year, at least in the regular season, that's a great time to have that. So why not? And then the kickoff time for me, it's awesome. It's interesting just to see the different views on things. I've had some conversations. I feel like I get a glimpse, and this doesn't really add up too much to me, quite frankly, that some of the younger fans or maybe the student population prefer the night games. I've had conversations with people in the past where they feel like the night game at ASU is like an identifiable thing about Sun Devil football, like it should be played at night. Mm-hmm. And yes, I know that there have been some great memories there, but I'm more of like a college football traditionalist, and that college football should be played during the day. Not to be on the soapbox here about it, but I guess if you're a college student and enjoy the weekend activities that a typical college student does, wouldn't you want an earlier game so that you could get that part not over with, but you could separate your game time from your evening activities? That feels like the best of both worlds to me. I know I enjoyed that back days of yore when I was a college student. So can't please everybody, but it does please me. That's for dang sure. And I'm sure the media types like Brad Denny, who, you get to what is your exit? Is it like a typical, like, after kickoff, this is when I'm usually leaving the stadium?
Yeah. Like for normal 7 o'clock kickoff, it's about 1:32 a.m.
Goodness gracious. So it's like a 7-hour?
7 to 8 hours, depending on like how much, how in depth of a story I need to write.
Yeah. So this will get you out between 8 and 9 p.m.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about that when we saw it, because we got tipped out about the K-State kickoff time. I was like, have I ever left a press box when the sun is up? And I don't think so.
Gosh, because, especially not at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe when was it, like the Cincinnati game?
It was at night.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's no hope.
But yeah, when it's still in the PM, that's a huge plus.
Right, yeah. When it's still the same day that it kicked off in, that's a plus for sure. But yeah, no, I love it, and hopefully it's a packed house. Hopefully folks are out there, tailgating in the morning time, the late morning time, and just make a scene out of it, because I know for a fact those BYU fans are going to be there. That's for sure.
All right, so before we look at ASU's recent run of recruiting wins, hoop season's underway. We'll be getting into more hoops talk here next week, but not a terrible start. The Hurley's Devils, year after year, it seems like an almost new team, but a lot of hype behind this one, a lot of talent on this roster, but 2-1 start so far, Joe.
Yeah, and so, as we record here on Tuesday evening, so of course before ASU competes with Grand Canyon downtown Phoenix on Thursday, ASU's 2-1. We'll go into greater depth as things progress here. And maybe it's because the talk about football has been a lot more positive than it's been in the last couple of years. I think in November, the last 2 years especially, been begging for a distraction. Let's talk about something else. So
kind of like a U of A, it's basketball.
Yeah, exactly. And not that the last season was anything terribly special, unfortunately, for ASU basketball. But ASU stands at 2-1. Obviously before the season started, there was that televised exhibition game at Duke. That was entirely an exhibition game, but ASU got slaughtered, and that put a bad taste in some Sun Devil fans' mouths. You open up the season with a 55-48 win over Idaho State. Not tremendously inspiring, even in victory. Things looked better later that week with an 81-74 win over Santa Clara. And then most recently on the road, losing 88-80 ball game to Gonzaga. ASU played incredibly hard. I know a lot of us are not big, moral victory types, but honestly, in college basketball, playing a team like Gonzaga to be able to compete at that level, and ASU led for a good chunk of the game. I think it was either tied or ASU was ahead at halftime. So things have been progressing. You feel more inspired, I think, by that loss against Gonzaga than you did against Idaho State, even though that was a victory there. So ASU, you're just working all the pieces together. The early returns, BJ Freeman has looked really good. Sanan, one of the those 5-star true freshmen, has been consistent as well. Jaden Quaintance, a little rough going scoring in the early standing of the season, but has rebounded and played well in other components of the game. So we're going to see how this team progresses. I know that they're obviously going to be a lot of eyes and a lot of opinions based on what happens this Thursday night, the 14th, against GCU, because ASU still has that edge there. Obviously, Grand Canyon did some special things in the postseason last year, so this is one where, depending on the outcome of this game, I think is going to dictate how comfortable fans feel about this season, maybe the program. So we'll let that one transpire, but you'll be hearing from us after the fact, because after this Grand Canyon game, then you have 2 home games against St. Thomas and Cal Poly. Certainly, presumed for those to be wins. So we will see how things transpire in downtown Phoenix against GCU, but so far things are improving a little bit. I know a lot of Sun Devil fans wanted fireworks right away because you got that great recruiting class and some key transfers. We'll see how things develop. But again, you feel a little bit more inspired now than you did around the time of that very first game.
All right, Joe, let's round out the news section with talking some recruiting wins. Now, ASU had a huge recruiting visit weekend for the UCF game, and that paid some dividends. They had some already guys that were committed, some guys that were committed elsewhere, some 25s, some 26s, and they came away with 4 new verbal pledges. Let's start off maybe going and work our way back. So some guys in that 2026 class, wide receiver Cooper Reed, continuing the Texas to Tempe pipeline, a 6'5" wide receiver, and that's maybe the theme here we're seeing in terms of just adding some size at that position for the future. A 3-star performer, and then ASU also was able to have somebody stay true to ASU, to bring dust off that old phrase. Hometown hero type, 3-star 2026 DB Zeth Angel Thuis, 5'11", 169 pounder at Liberty High School out in Peoria. The number 10 overall player in the state of Arizona in the 2026 class per Rivals.
Yeah, so that brings the commitment list for 2026 to 3 players. Reed, as you mentioned, 6'5". You got to love that in a young wide receiver. He's on that high 3-star level that Rivals has with that 5.7 rating, so that's just a touch below a 4-star ranking. So we will see what happens. Obviously, he's got another full season, as all these guys do, to play. If he can maybe increase and improve upon that ranking there. Just love to see that Texas pipeline continue. Love to see get some tall wide receivers in the fray. And then, as he talked about with Theus, he played at Saguaro last year. A lot of compliments from some of the insiders about his tackling ability and the football IQ. So those are things very, very helpful from the defensive back position. Looks like he's at a different school now out in the West Valley, but these are good pickups to have. You got Arizona and Texas, so that's kind of staying on brand with what ASU's been wanting to focus on a lot with recruiting.
All right, so let's talk about the 2025, starting off with the wide receiver position and big size. Let's talk about Jordan Scott, 3-star JUCO wide receiver in that 2025 class, ranked the number 1 JUCO wide receiver in the country, and he stands a solid 6'7". So that is some size. Maybe maybe he turns out a little bit better than last time ASU brought in a 6'7" receiver.
And I mean, it's kind of ironic in a sense that the one team that it seems like ASU beat out for Scott's services is Florida State. So I don't know, maybe this is like the Johnny Wilson trade player to be named later kind of thing. Yeah, 6'7", 215 pounds. It's kind of weird because it's such just a difference of recruiting culture now versus the not too long ago past, especially as it was under Todd Graham, that JUCO guys just seem like they're so few and far between, which I understand because when you can hit the transfer portal as you do, you want to go for that experience level. But man, again, being excited about a 6'5", 185-pound receiver, got to be real fired up about a 6'7", 215-pound receiver. So if nothing else, he gives you that size. And we've heard and read things that he is a receiver, not someone that's like going to merge into a tight end. So size alone, that is an impressive thing. And again, one of the top JUCO prospects at any position. So this is someone that could come in because, as we know, ASU needs to add some quality players at wide receiver. You're probably going to have some departures there, some graduations, and as we've talked about on many occasions, just the performance has been very disproportionate. It's mainly been one guy. So you want to load up on that position group, and they certainly did that with the commitments they obtained this past weekend. Yeah,
Jordan Scott, also a very smart guy as well. He's a big Steelers fan, his whole family, and he cited that Hines Ward, ASU's receivers coach, was a major point in terms of him choosing to be a Sun Devil, just like wide receiver Chance Abels, a 3-star 2025 wide receiver, continuing the Texas to Tempe pipeline as well, an explosive player in his own right, 6'2", 175-pounder. So, man, I believe he's now the 5th Texan in this 2025 class.
Yeah, and some solid offers to compete with ASU's Arkansas, Baylor, Kentucky, Oklahoma State, TCU, Tennessee. So nothing too bad there. Yeah, it's a solid day when you get 3 wide receivers, and the shortest among them is 6'2". Not a bad thing.
Yeah, and Chance was a TCU commit at one point until he visited Tempe for the UCF game. And let's let him tell a story. So he had a chance to catch up with Chance. So here's the interview with Chance Abels. All right, let's start off with the big question here. Why was Arizona State the right place for you?
Well, Arizona State, they had kept in contact with me, like, way before I committed to TCU, way after. Like, they were very consistent. Coach Williams, like, he consistently hit me up. He always told me, like, once I come down there, I'm going to be a Sun Devil. So Eventually, I made up my. They hit me back up after a few people decommitted. I came out there and it was just like the new scenery. Everything was just brand new to me. The new coaching staff, like Coach Dillingham. So really, just like the coaching staff, the culture they have, like the family feel. That's why I committed to Arizona State.
And of course, you were part of a very big recruiting weekend. A lot of visitors, some that
Oh
have
yeah.
also just decided to join you as a member of the 2025 class. What stood out most? What were some of the things that really kind of drove home, during your visit, drove home that this was the right place to continue your career?
Well, like the game day atmosphere, it was like it's different. All the fans they really care. Like some had already knew me before the game started, so it was like really it just felt like home. Coach Dillingham, man, it just coach that dude. He just different. So like we went to Top Golf. He was real into it. My mom, like they really got a good connection together. Him, Coach Ward. Uh, so really, it was just like that family feel. Those are the things that stood out.
And of course, you mentioned Kenny Dillingham's different. Of course, a young guy leading a major program, having a pretty good season so far. What do you, when you got during your process of getting to know Coach Dillingham? What are some of the things that really jump out to you in terms of this young man as a leader of a program?
At the game on Saturday, yep, they were down about two possessions. And I just seen him jumping up and down on the sideline, running across, trying to get everybody hyped. And he really just wants everybody to get better. Like he's gonna tell you like what you need to work on and things of that nature. So yeah.
And getting to know, throughout the recruitment process, Kenny likes to say that, the players at Arizona State, have more fun while working harder than any players in the country. And, you mentioned kind of the culture is one of the factors in your ultimate decision. During the weekend, as you got to kind of be there and take it all in, what was your read on the vibe of the culture of Sun Devil football?
The vibe was just great. It's really genuine. So like when I got out there, I got with Nick. Nick was my driver, mainly like my main host. Coach Shelta, great. It was like they just made me just feel like real involved. Like everybody cared. All the players like they dapped me up. They talked to me. They gave me game on like the program. Every man Texas to Tempe, like that is real. Like it's so many people from Texas out there, and y'all just automatically get along and like know each other. Like that's just how it is. So that's really what it was.
And of course, you'll be playing for a guy that I think should be a future Hall of Famer. Of course, has a Super Bowl MVP on his mantle, and Hines Ward. What's really jumped out to you about? Obviously, the world knows Hines as the Pro Bowler, All Pro player, but what jumps out to you about Coach Ward?
Coach Ward, he's genuine. Like he wants to make you a better man. Other than like football player, so like he's just gonna keep it super real with you. And that's really what it was. Like he's gonna keep it real with you, and like he know what he's talking about. So yeah, those like yeah, he just kept it so real. Like that's what it was.
He likes to say, no rock if you don't block. And so obviously, he being a name for himself is not just catching 1,000 passes, but, being the most dominant blocker from the receiver position during his career. How does, how do you view that? Kind of doing that dirty work, the blue collar work that obviously, doesn't go in the box score, but is obviously a big factor in a team's success.
Oh yeah, I agree with it. Like that's another reason I committed. In my school right now at Plano East, like I block a lot. Like I take passion to my blocking. Like you see on my film, I got a few pancakes on there. And really just like he takes part of that. Like that was like in my recruiting meeting, that was like the first thing he taught me. Like he was already giving me tips on how to block better. Like demonstrating it with me, actually showing me on film. Uh, that's really what it was. Like he knows what he's talking about when it comes to blocking. So like I really appreciate that from him.
Of course, your future team's having a really successful year, off to a 7-2 start. Ticket to the postseason's already punched. A team that's still in Big 12 title game contention. And watching the Sun Devils from afar, and obviously seeing them up close this past weekend, what's been your impression of the product on the field?
It's really like a polished product. Like everybody like you could tell they're supposed to be there. They're really athletic, fast. Like everybody tempo's great. You just see like they're supposed to be there. It's really like just really nice. Like them dudes are right.
Of course, there's a young quarterback having a lot of success in Sam Levitt. What's jumped out to you most about seeing your future quarterback doing his
Bro,
thing?
bro, Sam's a dog. He can run, he could throw. He made things shake with his legs. I'm talking about just running around in the pocket, finding open people like Jordan Tyson. Uh, that dude's a dog. Like I got a nice connection with him. I talked to him a little bit over the weekend. He's just a real dude.
And of course, you mentioned that you enjoy blocking, have some pancakes to your credit. But for any ASU fans that might not have seen your huddle film or seen you in person, give our viewers and listeners a scouting report. What are the things that you bring to an offense?
All right, well, if you ask me, I'm pretty explosive. If you see on my film, I could catch a slant. And I'm taking it 80 yards, just multiple of them. A post. I'm outrunning people. So that's really what you're gonna get, an explosive player. Uh, I'm gonna make the right decisions. I'm not gonna get tackled by the first person. So I'm gonna add some yakking to the offense. And I'm just different from like other receivers. Like I'm bigger, I'm longer, faster. So you'll see a lot. Like I'm gonna be used a lot in different situations.
And Kenny has made placed a premium on bringing players into the program that are young men of high character and obviously fit in the program culture. So what kind of a Sun Devil are you going to be off the field?
I'm gonna be a reliable. I'm just a genuine person. Like I'm gonna help people out. I'm not gonna like do anything bad or anything like that. Uh, that's really what you're gonna get, a reliable person who's just gonna be there. I'm gonna help out, and that's what it is. But like you said, he really does take pride in that. Like we talked about that a lot. Like he really takes pride in how good of a person you are.
You mentioned, of course, you're going to not be you're going to be far from the only Texan on this roster when you get here. The Texas to Tempe connection has been really strong over the last couple of years. This is a question I always like to ask kind of the guys coming out of Texas. What makes Texas players different from players from anywhere else?
I say we're very well coached. Like we're gonna go into like college like knowing how to read defenses and stuff like that. And we're really just aggressive. Like not most people aren't aggressive like us. We're bigger, faster. That's what you're gonna see out there.
And I believe you're going to be an early enrollee and participate in spring as well. So, over the next couple months, what are the things that you're looking to work on to, prepare yourself for that big jump up from high school ball to major college football?
Well, really, my conditioning and like getting in the weight room. So I want to be like as well conditioned as I can be. I want to be able to go out there and play, like do the whole practice without getting tired, including conditioning. So that's really like the main thing because I know it's gonna be hot out there, dry heat. It's gonna be beaming on me. So that's what it is. And then I want to just get in the weight room because I'm not the biggest right now, but like I'm trying to put on some weight. So when I go out there, I can be able to block and break tackles. So that's what I'm working on.
Next fall, when you're running through Tillman Tunnel past the Pat Tillman statue onto the field at Mountain America Stadium, what do you think that's going to mean to you? What do you think the thoughts in that moment are going to be running through your head?
It's gonna be a lot. Like it's gonna be new, different atmosphere. I'm not from Arizona, so it's gonna be brand new for me. I'm gonna be thinking a lot of things.
Now, before we take a look back at ASU's inspiring win, even in some challenging circumstances against UCF, huge shout out and thank you to DevilsDigest.com. Obviously, you're here to get information about Sun Devil athletics. That's why you're looking at us and listening to us and all the wonderful things I'm sure you've been doing for well over a decade. If you got to complete that whole package of things by becoming a subscriber at Devil's Digest, I know I'm preaching to the choir. I'm sure you're telling me I've been a Devil's Digest subscriber since August of 2011. I don't know if we were really preaching the good word of Devil's Digest at that point, but we'll pretend that we were. You get great content. You get information from across the entire network. You can read about other teams, read about recruits. You can follow football, basketball. Devil's Digest is going to get you some baseball coverage, other sports as well. Seriously, no shortage of information, whether you're looking for the Sun Devils only or maybe to trickle down into the college football, college sports world. As we always tell you, if you have a subscription to Devil's Digest, that gets you access to some premium content across the entire network, gets you involved in the Devil's Huddle, a great message board community where you get all that information, dialogue, and discussion among your fellow Sun Devil fans. You can't beat it. So get to rivals.com, get to devilsdigest.com, become a subscriber today. We got the holidays coming up. What better gift could you give your loved ones than a round of subscriptions to devilsdigest.com?
All right, Joe. Good teams find a way. That's going to be the thesis statement for this entire episode. It was something that Kenny said multiple times after ASU's 35-31 clutch victory over UCF. Now, again, as we talked about off the top, ASU did not play particularly well. The offense put up a paltry yardage total. The defense really kind of wore down as the play differential was really apparent. And, UCF finally got the ground game going in that second half. But in those moments that often, swing either way and pivot between a win and a loss, ASU did well. They did just enough. And at times, UCF just made some confounding decisions. But overall, it was just a game that, as Kenny said, good teams find a way. That this is a game that I think we've said this about maybe about 2 or 3, or maybe even 4 games. This is a game that maybe that all ASU teams in the past would absolutely lose, but this 2024 edition, they're finding the ways to win.
Yeah, there's so much about this game when you look back at it. You really think, like, how in the world did ASU win this game, and how much of that really hinged on just a few very key plays. I mean, ASU got outgained by nearly 150 yards, rushed for only 99 yards on the day. I mean, if you look at this box score, like Noah Scat was out, like if you didn't know the final score and you look through these numbers, you figure ASU lost by double digits easily. Even the first downs, UCF had 26 to ASU's 18. There just aren't a ton of numbers as you look through the box score once again that favor ASU. Also was another miserable day on 3rd and 4th down conversions that were allowed by the Sun Devil defense. 8 out of 16 when you combine the 2, including 2 out of 3 on 4th downs. But as you mentioned, as has been repeated, and all that really matters is that the team found a way to do it. I mean, even from that first drive, it seemed dismal. UCF converts on a bunch of 3rd downs, takes half the first quarter off the clock and scores a touchdown. But that wasn't the whole story for ASU. Once again, in a season that, in any special season, and it's already special, even if it's 7-2, because of just what ASU's done to work its way out of the cave that it was in for a couple years. Weird things happen, and you win games that just don't make sense. That's, again, what good teams do, and that's what tough teams do, and that's what ASU is this year, a good and tough team.
So let's start with the offense. Now, you mentioned, Joe, they got nearly outgained by almost 150 yards because ASU only put up 260 yards. That's about almost half of what they had against Oklahoma State. It was, not really, with Cam out, if you don't have your best offensive player, you're obviously going to struggle a little bit. And, Kyson Brown did a solid job, I believe, at a career high with about 73 yards on the day. Sam Levitt, didn't necessarily set the world on fire, but he made the plays when they needed him most. 3 touchdowns that we talked about, no turnovers. He's a guy, one of those things that, coaches said, it's such a cliche, but just ball control, don't turn the ball over. But he's doing it. But when the team needed those plays, he's not just a game manager. That final drive, 5 of 6, ran for a first down on, I believe, a 3rd and 5, and, of course, had the touchdown to Jordan Tyson, who himself had a tremendous game. 8 catches, 99 yards, 2 scores, the huge 3rd down catch to, or that second half to keep things going. It was just the plays in the moment, the plays that ASU's offense has not made in any of those moments in the last few years, they continue to make. And now it's just like as things ramp up, as this team gets more comfortable, develops that chemistry and the rapport, it's just a pretty remarkable thing to see.
Yeah, and Kenny Dillingham's talking about like that middle 8, and ASU really dominated that in this one. I don't know what this secret sauce is for ASU, but I'd be eager to see like how many points ASU has scored like within the last minute or two of the first half this season, because it seems like it's game after game after game where ASU gets points right at the end of the half, like right at the end of the half, maybe to tie or to go ahead, or in an instance like this, obviously this was a go ahead situation where you have that touchdown by Shimon Mateer, which thought that was going to be that late score, and that brought ASU within 3 points, and then you had that whole ordeal with that special teams breakdown, absolute cluster by UCF. I feel like we just need to kind of rehash that a little bit, because watching it in real time, I just couldn't figure out what that fellow was doing when he just thought it through, didn't run it, I don't understand why you do that, because you can still, if you have the ball inside a certain window of space, that's still a touchback, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there any logical reason that guy for UCF ran that ball?
No, I like if the ball is loose and it's in the end zone and you corral it, 10 times out of 10, you take the knee, you get it, you get the touchback, you get some room. At that point, there are just a few seconds left in the first half. It was just like those two decisions there by the returner, and then presumably Tim Harris, the offensive coordinator, maybe Gus Malzahn, just with just a few time run dwindling in that first half at the 1 yard line. I mean, everybody in the press box was like, "Okay, quarterback sneak."
Always, you'd never throw in that circumstance. Ever.
And then they line up out of the gun, and if I'm not mistaken, I might be, but there was a timeout, and then they came back in the same formation again, and then threw, of course, the pick to LaTerrence Welch, who was coming out for the best game of his career, and just capped out with his first, as he said, his first ever pick six at any level.
Oh wow, yeah, and that's what's funny about it is that, myself included, a lot of us were pretty hot about the fact that after the review, it was not ruled a safety. You're like, man, taking away points, that sort of thing. And then one play later, like, all right, never mind.
It's better than two.
That's good. I'll take it. You guys are geniuses. Big 12 refs for life. That was huge. And as you talked about, LT Welch, someone that it's taken a while to really, really catch on. And we really heap praise upon him as a transfer in these last couple games. He's shown what he can do. So that momentum can be something, we really were curious about how the cornerback position would transpire for ASU. And there have been some highs. There has been play where it hasn't been a liability. There have been some standout play. Keith Abney, is playing at a high level as well. So that's a position group, I think that you got to be happy with, because you just didn't know what you're going to get out of that. So, thrilled to see guys like Welch contribute. Thrilled to see guys like Martell Hughes, Montana Warren, ones whose names may not have been called a ton throughout the course of the season, really coming to the forefront and being, massive contributors, reasons why ASU won and did not lose this game.
And it's interesting because we talked about those two just ridiculous decisions by UCF, and ASU also benefited from another one late in the game as well. You flip it over to the defense, you look up 406 yards allowed, that's the second most surrendered this year, 31 points given up, tied for the most. But in the key moments, they stepped up and they made the plays. Also aided, though, because the play disparity, UCF had the edge in time of possession. They were really wearing down ASU's defense. And that became readily apparent in the second half as R.J. Harvey and crew really was able to get that run game going. But, once ASU, their defense came up in big moments and forced a 4th down and 2 in that late in the second half. I don't know. I checked the math. At that point, that UCF was averaging 8 yards per carry in the second half. 4th and 2. They continue that drive, they probably win that game. They opted for a 46-yard field goal, which was missed. Then, of course, the game unfolded the way it did. But it's weird because it seems like these decisions that just ASU would be on the either making or on the receiving end in previous years, it's now to their benefit, which is weird in its own right.
Yeah, I mean, like they say, sometimes it's better to be lucky than to be good, and this is at a minimum the third time that a coaching decision by the other team has essentially helped lead to a Sun Devil victory. I mean, you think about Mississippi State refusing to go away from that 3-man defensive front, and Cam Scadaboo lit them up for 250 yards. You think about Utah dying on the hill of playing Cam Rising, who was as beaten down as any football player in a game that I've ever seen. And now you have this. So when things go your way, hey, you can't complain about it. And you look at the numbers for UCF, 177 net rushing yards, 4 touchdowns. If you look at those, you think, man, they ran all over ASU. But I think that's still like 100 yards short of their per-game average. They're one of the top, I think they're third in the country, something like that, in rushing yardage per game leading into the game, in the ballpark of 270 a game. So if you hold them to 177 yards on 4.8 yards per carry, you talked about how, in the second half, things were moving and they had a bunch of guys getting involved. That Ja'Cory Brown, he got that touchdown run from the quarterback. They were getting creative, especially in the red zone with what they were doing, running the ball. But it didn't break you in half. It bent things around, but it just did not break you in half. Again, that's another one of those things. If you just take a snapshot and look at the rushing numbers, again, UCF 177, 4 touchdowns, 4.8 yards per carry. ASU had 99 total yards as a team, no touchdowns, 3.1 yards per carry. You figure there's no way ASU won that game. But you know what? Things worked out pretty weirdly, and sometimes getting weird is a good thing.
Yeah, and all this was done with arguably the top defender, Keyshawn Elliott, out of the game. Jordan Crook, Caleb McCullough, and company, Tate Romney, they all stepped up at that linebacker spot. And then just the best players and the biggest moments made the plays, late in the game. CJ Fight has a big sack. And then on that critical fourth down where UCF lines to go for it, they got to pick that up to keep things going. And Xavier Alford gets in there, gets the hit. Miles Rouser comes in, helps him make the stop, turnover on downs. And of course, you mentioned LT Welch really coming on strong now with that pick six near the end of the first half. Those key moments, those pivot points, perhaps not even just those pivot points, not just in a game, but maybe one we look back upon as pivot points in a season, or dare I say, maybe a trajectory of the program.
Yeah, I mean, with Elliott being out, you had Jordan Crook with 9 tackles, Caleb McCullough with 8. And McCullough is someone that you can't even really call him like a backup, or he's really established himself this season. That's a great story. Crook, that was very likely, I'm sure, his best game as a Sun Devil, probably one of the better games, at least statistically, that he's had at the college level. So it's that next man up type of thing. It's people are ready to play, and they've got that energy, they've got that juice and that fire, and you can just tell how much it means to the players individually, but also the team. I mean, you saw the sideline after that pick six by Welch, and he was absolutely mobbed. Like when they get to the sideline, you do a little pose for the camera. He was mobbed, man. So you can tell that the team is fired up to see these guys step up and contribute. It's not always the exact same guys every year. I mean, it's going to be tough to pick a defensive player of the year for ASU because there are a lot of guys that it seems like just about every game, there are different guys that are stepping up in different ways. So that's something that, again, when that opening was there, guys answered the call.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it kind of harkens back to something that's become a recurring theme of this is a team that is like this culture is making tangible impacts. People like to maybe diminish the importance of team culture, program culture, but you see the buy-in of this team and you see the intangible impact in terms of the resiliency, the ability to counterpunch, the things that had plagued ASU teams for the last 5, 6, 7 years or so are no longer issues, and they're turning into strengths of the ability for this team to rally back and to have a different guy step up in key moments. And I think that really speaks to the ability of this coaching staff to implement a standard. And Jordan Tyson even dropped a Mike Tomlinism in the postgame presser. The standard is the standard, and he's talking about just no matter who's in there, there's a certain expectation now with Sun Devil football. And these guys are making it. And again, this is a team that is, I still think, ahead of schedule. So this is like the results of maybe the 2025, but they're now. And so this, I think, really is. And I guess maybe we can finish on this point. It's kind of interesting. Like ASU was 7 after the win, moved to 7-2, and I just tweeted out something, waiting for the press conference to start. Is ASU going to be ranked? And I think the fact that we're even having this discussion in the middle of November is kind of wild on its face. But there was still so many fans that were like, no, I don't want him to be ranked. I'm so scared of being ranked and all this stuff. But it's like what you want your program to succeed, to build. Kenny Dillingham sure as hell wants to get Sun Devil football to where all the fans have wanted it to be, but you can't be afraid to go to where you want to be.
I feel like in the off season, we need to do a show that's like, I don't know, Sun Devil fan quirks or urban legends or myths or just some weird, show that focuses on that because, it's something else out there. There's obviously the desire to win ball games and to do so, at a high level and be among the nation's best and be an elite program if that can be the case. But I think fans want like that to happen, but just to have every single, poll voter to just forget that ASU exists and accidentally not rank them, even if they were like 9-0 or something like that, doesn't really work out that way. I get that there have been historical circumstances, especially in terms of the meaningless and worthless preseason polls, where ASU has completely failed to live up to expectations. But, these loose correlations, if you take like a long, list of time and a massive sample, and remember maybe a couple seasons like your 1998s and your 2015s and that sort of thing, doesn't necessarily mean that every time ASU is ranked, they go on and stink up the place. So I'm a superstitious guy myself, not just a little superstitious. Ask me about how it was during the 2023 World Series when Texas Rangers were playing. That was the peak of superstition. So I kind of get it, but embrace it. Don't be mad at it. And don't think that it's if ASU ends up getting ranked at some point in this season, that's the reason if they happen to lose another game at some point in the future that it all draws back to that ranking.
I think if Sun Devil fans are afraid of success, the next few years might be a tough pill to swallow. All right, so let's talk to a couple of Sun Devils that really played a key role in helping to get the big win over UCF, but also going to be needed to really step up against a formidable K-State attack. But first, let's talk about the good brand, homefieldapparel.com, makers of premium vintage collegiate apparel, who have made an amazing ASU collection full of shirts, hats, coaches, jackets, hoodies, joggers. The weather is getting it's hoodie. I think it's officially hoodie season. I mean, it's mid-70s, but that's Arizona.
I'm a little chilly here in the studio right now. They got the AC rolling, and it's not hot, but I've been quite literally praying for these sort of situations.
As well, they just rolled out recently in the last couple weeks the new Campus Classic pullovers. 57 schools with windbreaker style pullovers, kind of harkening back to that late 80s, early 90s feel. Just a lot of nostalgia and comfort. But as of course, as we talked about, ASU is the collection that you really want to dial into as well. Over 30 pieces there. But with the holidays coming up, got great gift ideas for everybody on your list. Over 200 schools. Best of all, you can get 15% off your first purchase at homefieldapparel.com using offer code SUN24, SUN24. So just use that code at checkout at homefieldapparel.com for 15% off. All right, time to head into the trenches with a couple of key defenders. Let's start things off with defensive lineman Justin Wodtly.
So a big win for you guys against UCF, shutting down or eliminating one of the best run teams in the country. What were some of the keys to that performance?
Just doing your job, man. They really emphasized us playing up front, just setting edges, man, and not really being really too thirsty to try to make plays and stuff. Just set the edge and let the ball come to you. We know that R.J. Harvey was a really elusive, powerful back. So really just being able to contain him as best as we could, we knew that was going to be the game plan for us.
This another game where the team faced some adversity and had to kind of rally back. And now that you guys have done that a couple times and have that kind of proof of concept, knowing that you guys, no matter what, can counterpunch, as Kenny says, what does that do for your the overall team mentality, knowing that the ebbs and flows of a game, you guys are right there in it?
Man, it's the testament to the team that Coach Dillingham and the rest of the staff really put together. Man, you got a lot of guys that really love the game of football, that really want to come out here and compete and want to win. So being able to just lean on your guys, knowing that, whenever something hits the fan, it's not over with. This is a 4-quarter game and nothing's over till the clock hits zero. So really just being battle tested and just having to go through adversity, knowing that I know that not one of my guys are going to quit on me and I'm not going to quit on them.
So a couple weeks ago, you guys obviously get the bowl eligibility secure, but now with that 7th win, you guys are still right in the thick of the Big 12 race mix. What does that do for this team mentality and motivation?
Man, we just take it, 1 week at a time. Coach Dillingham doesn't do a whole lot talking about, bowl games and conference championships and stuff like that. Even though they're in reach, you got to take it 1 week at a time. You can't overlook any opponent. So focusing on Kansas State this week is a big step for us in accomplishing all of our goals.
Apologies if this has already been asked, but what are you kind of taking away from Kansas State's running offense? Seems like they got 2 really good backs in the backfield.
They definitely got a good back. I know they got a guy, Dylan Edwards. I think he transferred from Colorado. Very explosive. They got some patient guys. They're doing a lot of really good. They play together as a team. Blue collar football team. They don't really get bored of the things that they do. If they're running the ball well, that's what they're going to do. They pride themselves kind of on, running the ball and stopping the run. So if you take a team's identity away, it's going to be kind of hard for them to win.
You guys have faced a lot of really good running backs this year, a lot of teams that are kind of similar to that. Is there anything about this team that maybe sticks out, maybe more similar to another team you guys have played this season?
Like I said, it's a blue-collar program, man. They don't get bored with what they're doing. If they got to run inside zone 70 times this game to win, that's what they're going to do. So got to be disciplined, play your keys, play fundamentally sound, and the rest will take care of itself.
The challenges of facing a mobile guy like Avery Johnson, what does he what kind of things does he kind of present to a defensive line, trying to keep him contained?
He's very fast, very good football player. Just being able to just keep him in the pocket, contain those legs as much as possible, and really force him to make mistakes on his own. He's a smart football player, but he's young, so use that to our advantage.
What about the passing, pass blocking from them? What are you kind of seeing from them? It seems like they don't allow a lot of sacks. Is that something that you guys have seen, and how do you counteract that?
Yeah, man, working with Coach Ward and Coach Reynolds, really trying to perfect our pass rush. This is a fundamentally sound group. They're pretty good up front. They're going to use their hands. They're going to grab, hold a lot. So really using our hands, setting edges, getting off blocks, shedding and stuff like that is going to be our go-to this week.
Some of the issues on the road were kind of overcome a little bit and getting that big win against Oklahoma State. What are some of the do you think is going to be just kind of the intangible difficulties and things that are going to be facing you guys? Going up against a really good team, in a hostile environment.
We're going into a very loud stadium, like you said, a hostile environment. So we know we're going there by ourselves, and we all we got, we all we need. So basically, being our own cheerleader, bringing our energy for ourselves, man, because we're not going to get a lot of it out there. So we got to bring it for ourselves.
All right, so another big win against a high-powered rushing team against UCF. What were some of the keys you thought to the defense's performance, kind of keeping those guys in check?
It was just stopping the run, being able to stop the run. D-line specifically, it was just really being able to control your gap, get your eyes right so the linebackers could flow over and fit. And, that was pretty much the game plan, try to execute the best we could.
How does it feel to, have that seventh win under your belt? Obviously checking the box 2 weeks ago with the bowl eligibility, but now you guys have still in the overall Big 12 race.
It feels good. No one expected this except the people in our room. So, it's really good to know that, we have a team that believes in each other. And, it's just the same throughout the rest of the season as no one believes in us. 8-point underdogs, I think, going into this game. So it's just really nice to be able to see that the team believes in ourselves and that we have all the confidence that we could go compete for the chip. So,
where have you seen kind of the biggest strides in your game, being part of that really effective defensive tackle rotation?
I think the biggest strides have just been my run game. I think I've been playing the run really well this season. Just being able to get extension with my hands, play double teams, everything like that. And then Coach Reynolds just evolving my pass rush more. He's just been all around making me a way better player than when I came in.
What's it been like, just working with those guys like, CJ and just, that whole guy interior,
It's awesome because, CJ's young, but he's basically a vet. He's played a lot of football. And then same with Jeff, Jacob, all of those guys have played a lot of football. And this is my first season of playing like an actual season, so it's really cool to be able to learn from them and pick them apart and see what they see on the field, so I could relay it to my game.
Looking ahead, obviously, a pretty formidable opponent in Kansas State. Probably a little familiar with them from your time at Texas. What really kind of jumps out to this year's version of the Wildcats?
Wildcats, they're always a solid team, really disciplined team. It's never really about standouts for them. It's just that they work together really well as a unit, and so we just have to go in, be disciplined, outwork them, and just play our game.
In a moment, we're going to jump in behind enemy lines for our Know Your Enemy segment to learn a little bit about Kansas State. But right now, this one is for the homies. If you're looking for some fire food from a restaurant owned and operated by die-hard Sun Devils, you've got to make Burrito Express your local burrito joint. BE is a family-owned business that began in 1995 with a combination of authentic recipes, competitive prices, and a comfortable atmosphere. All of that makes dining with Burrito Express a unique experience. You've seen their passion on Twitter. You've seen how incredibly active they are, supporting Sun Devil student-athletes with a multitude of NIL deals. You might not be able to run the football like Cam Scattaboo, but you dang sure can eat like him. Go on and get you a burrito from Burrito Express. If you're part of that Sun Devil family, I know you are. Burrito Express is obviously a business well worth your support. The food, by the way, top tier every single day of the week. They've got 7 Valley locations. I do believe they might be growing, though, from what I've seen. 2 in Gilbert, 1 in Mesa, 1 in Chandler, 1 in Scottsdale, a Tempe location near Kyrene and Elliott, and that ASU location near Rural University, just about a half mile from Mountain America Stadium. Keep that in mind when you're tailgating for that final home game, that 1:30 kickoff. Nothing could go better for your pregame festivities than some Burrito Express. They're open 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, while some locations are open as early as 6 a.m. during the week and 8 to 3 on Saturdays and Sundays. You can order online at theburritoexpress.com for pickup or delivery. Be sure to give them a follow on Twitter and Instagram at BurritoEXP and on TikTok at Burrito Express AZ.
Joining us now to take us behind Wildcat lines is Kevin Fielder of EMAW Online, part of the Rivals Network. Kevin, how are you tonight?
I'm doing amazing, guys. Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk a little ball today.
For sure. So let's take just a quick kind of large-scale snapshot at things. K-State enters this game 7-2, just like Arizona State. Wildcats number 20 in the AP poll this week. A disappointing loss to Houston took K-State out of that second-place position in the Big 12 Conference. I'm sure the bye week helped, but where do you think this team is mentally now that they have to play a little catch-up and get some help in order to get back into that conference championship game picture?
Yeah, I guess that was the biggest conversation for Coach Kleiman and players on Monday when we spoke to them. The biggest thing was, are you guys watching the standings at all, knowing that you guys no longer control your own destiny and you need help from Colorado or potentially BYU, though Colorado looks like a little bit more of a likely path. And the mood was generally no. Like, we still have to handle business. If we don't win out, none of that matters. And so I think that the message is still like, you know what, we can't control what Colorado does, what BYU does, but we can control that, we win out. We win these last 3 games and we put in the hands of the football gods per se. And so I don't think anything has changed mood-wise. And I think that the bye week really helped sort of forget the Houston loss and work on some things. So the bye week couldn't have come at a better time. And now, obviously, they would have liked to come into that bye week winning, but the bye week came at a perfect time for them.
So this is the first meeting between ASU and Kansas State since the 2002 Holiday Bowl. For Sun Devil fans who maybe haven't seen a lot of Kansas State in recent years, how would you describe the brand of ball that the Wildcats showcase under head coach Chris Kleiman?
Yeah, it's very similar to the football that they played under Bill Snyder. Not the same by any stretch, but it's very physical. They're going to try and beat with the line of scrimmage. That's what Bill Snyder did. That's what Chris Kleiman wants to do. And so they're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to get physical at the line of scrimmage on defense. They're going to try and make you play faster. Instead of out-physicaling them, you're going to have to outpace them. And most teams just frankly aren't able to because K-State wins the physical matchup. And I think the thing that makes K-State so unique in that sense is it doesn't matter if they win 17-14 or 35-33 in a shootout. They are capable of doing it both ways. And it's something that Chris Kleiman has sort of tried to add is a little bit more versatility, a little bit more speed at points. And so you look at the addition of Avery Johnson at quarterback and Dylan Edwards at running back. They've tried to get faster because they know they can't just win on physical every game. And so I think that's helped them add a little bit more versatility and a little bit of a different identity to their typical ground and pound, try and out physical you at the line of scrimmage.
Speaking of Avery Johnson, there's a lot of hype surrounding him coming into the season. How have you seen him play, leading this Wildcat offense from the quarterback position so far this year?
It's been a roller coaster, to be honest. There have been moments where he hasn't really impressed, and there has been games where I thought he's played like a high-level, all-American level quarterback. The problem is it's not consistent. You look at the Houston game. I think that was one of his worst games at quarterback. He just struggled to hit the open reads, and some of it was definitely the weather. Some of it was his footwork. Some of it was Houston sending pressure, but he struggled to hit open throws, and his interceptions and his turnovers were bad interceptions, bad turnovers that you need to have back. But then you look at like the West Virginia game and the Colorado game, and even earlier on in the year, even the Tulane game when they had to come back on the road, he's had moments where he's looked like an incredible quarterback, and he's been able to battle through adversity and hit throws down the field. And the West Virginia game, for example, West Virginia took away the running game. They blitzed, they sent 6-7 at times, and they forced Avery Johnson to beat them. And Avery Johnson was cool, comfortable, and collected, and he was able to make the throws that you want a Big 12 quarterback to make. And so the biggest thing for these last 3 games, I think, is trying to find that consistency and finding the high-level play that he's had, but making sure that you can limit the turnovers and the mistakes that come from being a young quarterback.
The headliner of the offense, of course, running back DJ Giddens. He might go over 1,000 yards for the year on his first carry on Saturday. For those who may not have seen him in live action from the Sun Devil side here, what does he bring to the table?
Yeah, I'd be a little shocked if he didn't get to 1,000 yards in this game. I think if he did it, we would be a little bit more concerned.
Right.
For anyone who doesn't know, he's 5 yards away. He's probably going to get that pretty early. The thing that DJ Giddens does is he's so difficult to bring down. We're talking about a running back where you have to have 2-3 guys at him to tackle him. Arm tackles don't work. Safety's trying to tackle one-on-one. He's running them over. Like, truthfully, he's just running them over. He's not the fastest of running backs. He's got plenty of speed to make big plays, but he's not going to bust off the 90-yard touchdown run that, like, Dylan Edwards is probably a little bit more capable of breaking off. But the thing that he does so well is just he's powerful. He's going to wear defenses down, and he's going to turn 0-yard rushes or losses into 2, 3, 4-yard gains, and then he can turn 5-yard gains into 25-yard explosive plays. And that's what K-State has tried to build their offense around. And when teams don't take it away, they're able to just control the pace of the game and win the game pretty comfortably.
You mentioned Dylan Edwards, a guy that ASU is a little familiar with, from his time at Colorado, but an explosive player in his own right. And, along with Giddens, seems like both guys are also heavily involved in the passing game as well. How does this K-State offense like to utilize their pair of dynamic backs?
Yeah, the usage of Dylan Edwards has been a little bit weird for me. There's been games where he's been used a lot, and there's been games where he's been the typical running back too. And I think some of that is just the way he's built and the way that DJ Giddens is playing. You can't take DJ Giddens off the field. Now, the thing that Dylan Edwards brings is his speed, his electrifying playmaking ability, his ability in the receiving game. And so they use him a lot as like a secondary running back in like 2 running back sets and third downs and longs when they need explosive plays. The thing that I thought they've done a really good job at this year is finding ways to just get him the ball. He's a guy where you just need to find ways to get him the ball and let him make plays. And that's something that he's been able to do a lot this year in terms of just turning plays into big plays by just getting the ball in his hands. And so expect to see a lot of screens, a lot of shorter, receiving actions. Touch passes have been huge. And so those are like sort of the plays where they try and use him a little bit more. And now as we head into these last 3 games, he still seems a little fresh, so maybe they try and use him a little bit more. But outside runs and in the receiving game, shorter passes just to get the ball in his hands is sort of where they built him into this offense.
Sophomore wide receiver Jace Brown had an impressive freshman year in 2023. He's built upon that to become K-State's top receiver this year. How has he improved from year 1 to here in year 2?
Yeah, I think the thing with Jace Brown is he's become more consistent in terms of running his routes at a high level, in terms of catching the ball and making plays after the catch. The first year was a very encouraging year for Jace Brown. That true freshman season, he broke out later on in the year, became their number 1 or one of their top targets. And this year, he's just built upon that. And there's been moments where he's been able to generate big plays through the air. You look at the Colorado touchdown to win the game. If you're one-on-one with him, he can beat you down the field with his speed. And that's the thing that K-State tries to generate a lot of big plays with, is just his one-on-one speed, trying to get him down the field with big plays off of play action. And so I think they want to utilize the wide receivers a little bit more down the stretch. And now teams have taken those wide receivers away, and just general inconsistency has been a problem for Jace Brown and the entire wide receiver room. But for Jace Brown, he's an electrifying wide receiver with the ball in his hands. If you're one-on-one with him in a foot race, he's going to win the foot race. And, he's another one of those guys on that offense who's got the speed and the athleticism to make big plays.
Now, flipping over to the other side of the ball, what should the Sun Devils expect to see from the Wildcat defense schematically?
They're going to get aggressive. They're going to send pressure. They're going to send 6, 7 guys at times. The last drive of the Kansas game was sort of the perfect example of that. Instead of dropping 8 and trying to force Jalen Daniels to throw the ball, they sent 7 and said, Jalen Daniels, you're going to have to speed everything up and try and beat us. And so they're not afraid to send linebackers and safeties on pressures and try and force big plays with turnovers and sacks like that. And so 2 guys to really watch out for, Austin Romaine, the linebacker, and defensive end Brendan Mott. Those 2 have been awesome at rushing the passer and creating those big plays. Now, that does leave a little bit of a inconsistency and big play threat for the offense in the secondary, but if they can get home on the quarterback or on the running back, they can force teams to become one-dimensional and get them behind the sticks.
So you just mentioned Brendan Mott, defensive end, having an outstanding year. Got to be in the conversation for the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. Leads the Big 12 in sacks, ranks second in TFLs. What makes him such a special defender?
It's his just intelligence and his football IQ. I don't think he's the fastest. I don't think he's the strongest, but he knows what offensive linemen are doing. He knows what offenses are doing. And that comes down to being an experienced player who's played multiple years at K-State. There's not anything he hasn't seen from an offense. And so he's able to use the athleticism that he does have. I'm not saying he's slow, but he's definitely not as fast as some of their other defensive ends. And so he pairs that defensive or that savviness and that intelligence with the athleticism to become a consistent pass rusher. And this year he's really broken out in terms of putting it all together. And, as I think you mentioned, he's probably in the conversation for Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year just because of his ability to generate pressures.
So if I'm putting you in the shoes of ASU OC Marcus Arroyo, what kind of game plan are you drawing up to attack this aggressive K-State defense?
Yeah, it seems so weird because, when you have an Arizona State offense where their best player, should he play, is a running back like Cam Scatabo, I think you have to spread him out and force him and, throw the football around. The thing that K-State's done a lot this year is stop the run with running backs in particular. The quarterback run has been a little bit more of a problem, but they've been able to stop some of the conference's best running backs. You look at Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State. They did a really good job of neutralizing him when they played Oklahoma State earlier this year. But their problem is because they play so aggressive, they try and generate big plays. Teams have been able to beat them down the field. And so the thing is you have to try and methodically get them into pressure looks where they try and send 6 or 7 to get to you. And so if they're not winning with 4 guys or 5 guys, they're going to send 6 or 7 to try and get pressure. And when they do that, teams have to be ready with their man beaters, their deep passes to try and beat them down the field. And if you've got enough of those, you can create havoc for K-State's defense and force them, into those big plays that they have been trying to find solutions for.
So what kind of environment does the K-State fan base and Bill Snyder Family Stadium kind of present to a visiting team?
Yeah, Chris Kleiman and players have said multiple times that they feel that the student section and the fans at Bill Snyder Family Stadium is going to give them extra points in the game. They feel comfortable with the fact that to some degree between pre-snap penalties and procedural penalties and just dealing with the general crowd noise, they think it adds points to their final score. And it thinks that it gives them a couple points in terms of an advantage. So their home field advantage is rocking. And for a night game in particular, that place is going to be sold out and packed an hour before the game, an hour and a half before the game. And they're going to be loud. They're going to be, rowdy, and they're going to try and force defenses opponents, into poor situations if you can't deal with that crowd noise. And so I think to some degree, some teams try and go away from the helmet communication and go to more of the signals and, playing a little old school because you can't really hear things on the field. I've been on that field when the crowd gets going, and it is loud and it is a difficult environment, to listen to what everyone else is talking about. So if you can't handle that crowd noise, you're going to have pre-snap penalties. You're going to have false starts and delay games just because of how loud that crowd is consistently.
So ASU fans, Big 12 fans will probably know the name DJ Giddens, Avery Johnson, Brendan Mott. But who are some other guys, maybe one from each side of the ball, maybe some under-the-radar X-factor type players you think are going to play a kind of a key role in determining Saturday's outcome?
I don't know if this is cheating, but for offense, it is just all of the tight ends. They have found ways to get all of the tight ends involved. We're talking probably 4 tight ends with Garrett Oakley, Will Swanson, Will Ancio, and Braden Lofton. They all have multiple touchdowns on the year. They're all used a lot in the red zone. Because they're big body targets for Avery Johnson. And so I know you said one, but it feels like for the offense, it's just all of the tight ends.
One position group.
Yeah, I mean, for the sense of this, it's just all of the tight ends that are going to be involved and make big plays. On the defensive side of the ball, we will go with one player, and that's safety Marquise Siegel. Siegel has had an up and down season. Early on the year, he struggled. Over the last few weeks, he's created turnovers, he's created big plays, and he's playing at a higher level. They use him a lot at the line of scrimmage in the box to try and create that numbers advantage that they want in those situations. And so while he may be listed as a safety, he plays a lot of slot. He plays a lot of, fourth linebacker, third linebacker, and they're going to try and use him and move him around the field. And if he can get the ball, or if teams try and target him, he's going to create big plays. That's something that he's done a lot this year, and it's been a focus of him heading into the year, was he wanted to create more turnovers. And so far, he's got a touchdown off a pick six against West Virginia. He had a pick the next week, and so he's found ways to generate big plays over the last few weeks. And when he's playing at a high level, the entire defense is playing at a high level.
All right, so last one for you. For any ASU fans that are making the trip out to Manhattan, what are the must-hit food spots?
Man, I've only been here for a few months, so I'm still trying to learn them all. A few that I've enjoyed so far, Bourbon and Baker in downtown. I think it's Bourbon and Baker. Downtown is incredible. The food is really good. It's a very small plate style food, but it's really good. If you want Mexican food, Taco Lucha is the place you have to go. I've heard opposing coaches send GAs to get the food from there because of how good it is.
All right.
And so I will sign off of that place any day of the week. If you're looking for an environment to get drinks, Tanner's and So Long Saloon are two of my favorites in Aggieville, which is the other downtown. And then if you're a coffee guy like I am, if you're just obsessed with coffee like I am, hit up Radina's. There's 3 in Manhattan, and the coffee is incredible. As someone who makes lattes and makes espresso every day, I will sign off on their coffee being high level if you're looking for coffee.
Well, Kevin, definitely appreciate your expertise and insights into K-State and the Manhattan food scene. Really appreciate it, and encourage our folks to head over to EMAW Online to learn more about ASU's upcoming opponent. Kevin, thanks again.
Absolutely, guys. Anytime.
Now, before we dive into how Brad and I see this ball game with Kansas State shaping out, we're going to give you a full rundown of the Wildcats. We got to give some love to Cactus Sports. While many ASU stores have come and gone, Cactus Sports is a community staple. Founded, owned, and operated by ASU alumni since 1992, every purchase made through Cactus Sports results in royalties that help support Arizona State University. Many of their competitors have been bought out and operated by out-of-state corporations, while Cactus Sports stays locally owned and operated. They consider it a privilege to be able to work together with their guests, alumni, fans, and students who help give input for some of the purchases that Cactus Sports makes. When you purchase from Cactus Sports, not only are you assured of the highest quality officially licensed merchandise, but you also have the satisfaction of knowing that you truly helped support a local Sun Devil-owned small business. They're located at 514 South Mill Avenue in Tempe, open from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and Sundays from 10 to 6. You can get that burrito shirt that we mentioned last week, that collab with Cactus Sports and Burrito Express. Doesn't get any better than that. You can also view their full inventory and shop online at cactussports.com with free domestic ground shipping for orders of $75 or more. We talked about that burrito shirt. You also get that Activate the Valley line that includes a donation from every purchase to ASU's Sun Angel NIL Collective. And they're also a retail partner of another sponsor of ours, Home Field Apparel. So you're seeing all this love. Everybody's getting the picture here. We're all working together. So go support Cactus Sports, locally owned and ASU alumni operated since 1992. Shop at Cactus Sports and think local, buy local, be local. So now we're going to dive into this ball game against Kansas State. This is one that from the beginning of the season I looked at and said, man, that's going to be a tough one on the road. It's the 7th all-time meeting between ASU and Kansas State. This will, however, kind of oddly, be the first time that ASU's ever played at Kansas State. ASU won the first 5 in the series, all in Tempe, in 1964, 70, 72, 82, and 89. And that most recent meeting, the only win for Kansas State in the series, a 34-27 victory over the Devils in that 2002 Holiday Bowl in San Diego. That was a great time because guys like Sean McDonald and Terrell Suggs and Darren Sproles and Terrence Newman played in the bowl game at the Holiday Bowl.
What a novel concept.
What a time to be alive there. K-State enters this game 7-2 on the year, ranked number 20 in this week's AP poll. They're fresh off a bye week. You said they're 16. I haven't actually checked.
16 in the playoff rankings.
The playoff rankings are always released like right about the time that we're starting to record when we do these Tuesday night recordings. They have wins over UT Martin, Tulane, a non-conference win over Arizona. Is that one I believe had been on the books for a while before the moves to the Big 12. Also beat Oklahoma State, Colorado, West Virginia, and Kansas, but they lost to BYU and kind of a gut-wrenching one prior to the bye against Houston. Like ASU, they're in the running for the Big 12 championship game, but need some help to get there. Head coach is Chris Kleiman. He's in his 6th year at K-State. He previously was the head coach of North Dakota State. Outside the COVID season, he's won at least 8 games each year as head coach of the Wildcats. And obviously with one more win, he'd reach that mark again this season. He replaced the legendary head coach Bill Snyder, who, with the exception of a 3-year hiatus away from the program, he was at Kansas State from 1989 through the 2018 season. Fun little fact I dug up today. Bill Snyder's head coaching debut at Kansas State, a 31-0 loss to ASU in Tempe on September 9th, 1989.
Wow.
Little fun fact there against one of the legendary college football head coaches of all time. Started it with an L here in Tempe, and we'll see if that sort of thing can repeat itself in Manhattan.
Yeah, Kansas State's been always like a fun program. They always seem to have really exciting players and produce some good NFL talent. I really kind of first took note of them back in the Michael Bishop days when they were having great success. It was 98, 99?
Yeah, I think they were in the Fiesta. Was that the Fiesta Bowl? I think they played. Did they play against Syracuse with Donovan McNabb, or am I just making up random fever dreams?
Yeah,
okay, sure.
That'd be a hell of a matchup. Let's sim that on the video game. But yeah, just like one of those most consistent brands because Snyder Ball, they're hard-nosed teams, physical, run the ball, play good defense, be excellent on special teams, and just I can't help but like kind of shake that they're like Prairie, Utah, or I don't know, Midwest, whatever the geographic region, because they have that kind of same, not only just kind of the same blueprint, but also just kind of the consistency in identity, and they have one of the most distinct identities of success. It happens just like Utah. When you have the success, you know who you are. And even with the change from the long-term coaching tenure of Bill Snyder, now Chris Kleiman, a guy who obviously hoisted a number of titles and banners at the FCS level, is now really built and continued Kansas State's legacy as one of the toughest outs in the country.
Yeah, they're just a solid football program year after year. Obviously, a new opponent for ASU, or obviously the first time the Devils have played in over 20 years now. That's humbling to think of the time that I was a college student as beyond 20 years ago, but that's what you get with life. But yeah, very, very solid program. One that, just from the outside looking in these pre-Big 12 days for ASU, kind of like surprised because, back then you think it's always going to be the Oklahomas and the Texases and that sort of thing, maybe an Oklahoma State. But then K-State, just always a solid program, not too far removed from a Big 12 championship. So taking a look at the personnel that they have, they had to make a pretty big change at quarterback with Will Howard transferring to Ohio State this past offseason. Their replacement's Avery Johnson, someone that was already on the roster, played a fair amount as a true freshman last year. First season as the team's full-time starter. He has emerged, as you heard about, he has shown quite a bit of flash, some young moments as well, but he's completing about 61% of his passes, averages about 210 passing yards per game, 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 391 net rushing yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's got 3 games this year with at least 250 passing yards. He had a career high 298 against West Virginia. He's also rushed for at least 60 yards on 4 occasions with a college career high of 110 against Arizona. As a runner, he ranks second among Big 12 quarterbacks in rushing yards, tied for third in rushing touchdowns among those Big 12 QBs. So this guy, he has the potential to be a pretty high-level playmaker beyond his years, so someone that could be a fixture at K-State for quite a while. So just a dynamic quarterback ASU will be facing this weekend.
Dynamic quarterback that Kenny Dillingham in his previous stops wanted to play for him. He mentioned on Monday that he had really been recruiting Avery Johnson for a while, and it was his success last year. I don't think there was a good segment of that K-State fan base that wasn't necessarily too sad to see Will Howard go, and maybe Johnson's emerging down the stretch maybe helped nudge him out the door a little bit. Finish the season on a high note, but even with that hot start and all the expectations, as you heard, some ups and some downs so far this year. But this is still an old school type of run game. They have a very effective tandem of backs, as we'll get to in a second, but. You'll see a lot of 12, 13, even 14 personnel. That really is, they look to ground and pound, use those tight ends a lot. But also that also opens up the play action passing game as well. But of course, they're effective running the ball. Pretty decent in terms of the pass efficiency, but just this is an offense that even though they are kind of smash mouth, Joe, what I was kind of surprised that they in terms of 30-yard plays on offense, they are able to pick them up in chunks. 24 such plays, 19th in the country. So it's not just 3 yards in a cloud of dust. This is a team with a lot of explosive elements.
And it feels like I say this every single week in the Big 12. ASU is facing a nationally prominent running back, this time in the form of DJ Giddens, a 6'1", 212-pound redshirt junior. He spent his whole career at Kansas State. That is one thing I noticed looking through their roster, at least of their starters and key playmakers. They have some transfers, but it doesn't look like they've really leaned as heavy into the transfer portal as a lot of others have. Guys like Johnson, guys like Giddens, they are homegrown talent there. I know that Kansas State under Snyder was heavy into junior college recruiting back in the day. They really did that right. So it's something that I guess you kind of like to see. Guys start at one place and work their way through there. As we mentioned in the Know Your Enemy segment, he's 5 yards away from a 1,000-yard season. Probably do that on his first or maybe second carry of the ball game against ASU. If he doesn't get to 1,000 yards against ASU, that means it's either a superhuman defensive performance or there was an injury, which we certainly don't want to see. He has 995 yards on 162 carries. He averages 6.1 yards per carry, 5 rushing touchdowns in 9 games. A little slight on that number. He's got 500-yard games this season, but his last outing was his poorest in nearly a full year. Total just 50 yards on 17 carries against Houston on November 2nd of this year. The last time Giddens had below 50 rushing yards in a game was his 22-yard outing against Texas on November the 4th of last year. Statistically, if you put it on a national scale, he ranks 12th in the country in both all-purpose yardage per game at a little over 134 and in rushing yards per game at a little over 110. He's 22nd in the nation in rushing yards per carry at 6.14. He can catch the ball, has 17 receptions for 213 yards and a touchdown catch. So, again, just another very talented running back that ASU is going to have to deal with this weekend on the road.
Yeah, and it's not the only talented back out there. Dylan Edwards, a name, of course, familiar to ASU fans perhaps from his time at Colorado. And, while Giddens might be that thunder element, so to speak, Dylan Edwards is absolutely a game-breaking type of guy. Tremendous speed, averaging nearly 7 yards a carry in his own right. And so when you have, and he's also a very good receiver and a guy who's active, just like Giddens, as pass catchers. So when you have DJ Giddens, you have Dylan Edwards, and you have a very mobile, electric runner at quarterback like Avery Johnson, that triple-headed beast is something that's going to be very difficult for ASU to contain.
Yeah, 5 total touchdowns on the year for Edwards, one of which was a special teams return, I believe, against Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, that 1-2 punch, something dynamic there. Jace Brown is the top receiver. He had a very good true freshman season, again, as you heard in our interview not too long ago. This year he's got 33 catches for 604 yards, shares the team high with 3 touchdown catches. He leads the team in receptions and receiving yards. He had a collegiate career high 121 receiving yards with 2 touchdowns earlier this year against Colorado. He can stretch the field a bit as well. He averages 18.3 yards per catch. That is the best in the Big 12 among players with at least 30 receptions, and there are 27 of those, so a decent sample to work with. Kind of like ASU, they've got that top guy, and then there's a drop-off from there, but you have those talented running backs, and Brown can make you pay as well. So they may not need a multitude of dynamic playmakers, though their tight ends get involved as well, but they have guys that they can rely on and guys that can cash in.
Yeah, obviously the big playability with Brown there, but 4 different tight ends on the roster with multiple touchdown catches, and so he talked about the 12, 13, going 14 personnel, and then we have the explosive backs as well. This is an offense that, while still maintains kind of, a lot of that Kansas State legacy identity in terms of kind of smash mouth, but this is an offense that can gash you with the big plays. We talked about the high number of 30-plus yard plays, but they're also situationally good, as to be expected with the Chris Kleiman program. Very good in the red zone. 7 out of nearly over 70% of the time, or they're cashing those red zone drives into touchdowns, among the better rates in the country. So this is an offense that really, when you look at the dual threat ability at the quarterback, the multitude of explosive backs, and some of the options that ASU's got to deal with in coverage, it's probably going to be among the tougher attacks to shut down on this schedule.
So as you look at this offense statistically from a large scale, it's kind of interesting because the offense and the defense are for Kansas State are fairly similar in that they run the ball well and they protect the backfield on offense, and they defend the run and attack the backfield very well on defense. Focusing for now on the offense, Kansas State ranks 7th in the country in team rushing yards per carry. They average 5.8 yards per carry as a team. They are 9th in red zone offense, converting about 94% of the time. They're 19th in rush offense at a little over 208 yards per game, tied for 20th in teams tackle for loss allowed, tied for 21st in sacks allowed per game. So they're within the top 20, 25, or maybe even top 10 in some fairly key areas. Those are the kind of things they talk about, defense and running the game. That's what travels. That's, when you can have consistent victories week over week. So what Kansas State has done, again, specifically on offense, very impressive stuff when you've got a team, not just one runner, but a team that can run for a very effective yards per carry clip. And your offensive line is doing a very good job on protecting the backfield. That's a great way to usher in a young quarterback. That's a great way to win a lot of ball games.
Yeah, I've talked about in recent weeks just that wanting some more out of ASU's pass rush. And, we saw another game against UCF where not a whole lot of havoc being wreaked in the backfield. So this should be an opportunity for ASU. Now, this is an offensive line that's got a lot of new faces, but they continue to be very effective up front. And one thing that jumped out to me about their offense is they're just kind of mid on third down, just converting 40% of their options. So if ASU can perhaps get them and have success in those early downs, contain obviously what's going to be a heavy dose of the run game, and force them into those third down situations. Now, against Oklahoma State, ASU's defense was very good, but they kind of reverted to recent form and struggles against UCF. So it's going to be interesting if they get in those third downs against Kansas State, kind of a middling third down offense versus a defense that has struggled on that down. Which unit's going to be able to get, say, on the field, or if ASU is going to be able to get them off? Yeah,
statistically, for the offense of Kansas State, there are two areas that jump out as, maybe some weaknesses, one of which is that third down conversion offense. They rank 65th nationally. Kind of music to the ears of Sun Devil fans, because that's been an issue that maybe it hasn't plagued ASU all year long, but there are only a few rare exceptions where it hasn't this season. And then Kansas State is 77th in the country in pass offense, averaging about 214 yards per game. A very run-heavy offense, so that kind of makes sense that you're going to have a little disproportionate numbers there. Flipping over to the defense, it's a solid defense with a couple standout players. Some of those names you just heard a moment ago in our interview. Brandon Mott putting together, the potential for a first-team All-Big 12 caliber year, maybe even in contention for the conference's Defensive Player of the Year. He is the conference leader in sacks with 8, ranks 11th nationally in that category. He also has 37 total tackles, including a team-high 9.5 for loss. That ranks him second in the conference. Also 4 quarterback hurries, 1 fumble recovery. So he's just someone that can, make life very difficult for opposing quarterbacks and running backs. And on the road, ASU is really going to need to keep him at bay.
Yeah, sometimes you'll see a lot of 4-man front with this defense, but as you heard, they're very, very aggressive. Now, they're very good against the run, which also I think allows them to be bringing a lot of pressure from different levels of that defense. Now, you look at some of the linebackers, they have guys that are very active and putting up some impressive totals, in terms of making some plays in the offense's backfield. Desmond Purnell, 6 TFLs on the year. Austin Romaine, 6.5, and Austin Moore in that group as well. In addition to absolute terror like Mott coming off the edge.
Yeah, you mentioned Austin Romaine. He has a team-high 69 tackles, including 6.5 for loss with 2 sacks, 3 quarterback hurries, 2 forced fumbles. He ranks 8th in the Big 12 by averaging 7.7 tackles per game this year. If you look at things at a high level, statistically for K-State on defense, they rank 8th nationally in rush defense, allowing 99.4 rushing yards per game, 11th in rushing yards per carry allowed, 3.12. They're tied for 23rd in the nation in team sacks per game at 2.78, tied for 31st in team tackles for loss at 6.6. So like I mentioned a moment ago, similar to what they do on offense, where they run the ball, they protect the backfield. On defense, they stop you from running and they crash your backfield. Now then, if we're kind of flipping things around and looking at some of the areas where they might struggle a little bit, they are 70th in the country in red zone defense, 83rd in pass defense. So there could be the opportunity for Sam Leavitt to continue the streak he's been on. It's a really good quarterback play.
Yeah, and they also have a really good safety tandem. ASU, of course, has a couple of pretty good safeties in their own right, and they're going to be a couple of good ones in the Wildcat backfield as well. You heard our guest talk about Siegel. There's a lot of Shamari Simmons comparisons for me in terms of a guy who's got a nose for the ball, but also not afraid to come up and make some tackles. And just like kind of Shamari Simmons, he has 4.5 tackles for loss in the year. Guy who gets some plays in the backfield. VJ Payne also has a few picks on as well. Those are two guys who had really strong seasons last year and now continuing that strong play. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly what ASU's game plan is going to be, because obviously their strength is running the ball, whether Scadaboo's in there or not. But we've seen the growth that Sam Levitt has, and we'll get to our keys in a moment. But if there's going to be any areas I think that ASU is going to be able to exploit, and perhaps if the long-awaited kind of emergence of some of these other receivers not named Jordan Tyson, this could be the week for it.
Now, before we jump into those keys to the victory for Sun Devil football and our scoreboard prediction, a huge thank you and shout out to Spaghetti Shack, which you certainly know by now, not just owned and operated by Sun Devils, but by former Sparky, the Sun Devil. The Spaghetti Shack is a community-focused to-go pasta concept started right here in Tempe, Arizona by 5 lifelong friends. They serve a menu starring spaghetti, meatballs, garlic bread, and a few other fan favorites. They make it their mission to provide quality, affordable food as quickly as possible so that you can spend less time cooking and spend more time with your loved ones. They offer a variety of Italian-American options for you to choose from, whether you want to pick one of their delicious options or build your own shack by choosing the amount of pasta, type of sauce, and protein. They have options for anybody and any family. I stopped by last week, just got the traditional shack, little spaghetti meatballs, some garlic bread. You cannot go wrong with that. They've got 2 locations, one in Tempe at 6340 South Rural Road near the intersection of Rural and Guadalupe. They're open every day from 11 to 9. And for those up north, they've got a Pine Top Lakeside location at 592 West White Mountain Boulevard, open daily from 11 to 8. You can follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at The Spaghetti Shack, and on Twitter at spaghetti_shack. So let's fire it on up. Brad, what is your first key to this ball game?
Now this is going to be one of those situations like shut down player X or limit player Y. Like just kind of mitigate the damage that DJ Giddens and Dylan Edwards do. These are 2 very talented players. They're used in creative ways. As you mentioned, they're not just running backs, but they're also heavy components in the passing game. I think with that combination, like they're going to get their yards. They might even get the end zone a couple times. I think ASU's number one key should be trying to kind of limit that damage as much as they can and put the game on Avery Johnson's shoulders.
And that last statement right there is the actual key for me to start things off, is putting the game on Avery Johnson's arm, put it on his shoulders. Do whatever you can to minimize the damage by the running backs and by Johnson as a rusher. When we talk about stopping the run, we're not just talking about Giddens. We're talking about 2 very capable running backs and a dual threat quarterback as well, any of which can hurt you, to some significant outcomes. So it's easier said than done when you're dealing with one of the top running teams in the country. But ASU, that is really what needs to happen on the road, because if you allow them to run all over you, that crowd's going to get into it. They're going to start breaking your back and breaking your spirit with third down conversions, things like that. So I want to see ASU's run defense play its game of the year in Manhattan, Kansas.
Key number 2 for me, it's got to be the Sam Levitt show. We'll get to exactly how I think the game plays out, but ASU I think is going to be needing to keep up for much of this game. I think there's going to be situations where that aggressive defense gets to Levitt, brings him down, puts him in some long yardage passing situations, or there might be some procedural penalties because it's a loud place. So I think Sam Levitt's just got to continue that growth. Now it's a very, very tall task for any quarterback to go into Manhattan and get a win, but what we've seen from the redshirt freshman so far this year is very promising. And whether he ultimately gets the job done or not, this could be some valuable lessons for his future growth. But if ASU wants to be in the here and now and get that 8th win, another ranked win, another top 20 win, I think ultimately it's going to fall on ASU side on Sam Levitt's shoulders.
And before I jump into my second key, just a reminder, we don't share notes or cheat in any capacity. So when there are similarities in our keys, that's just us being wise and, over a decade worth of doing this thing together. So
emphasizes how important these keys are.
Exactly. So my second one is to keep Sam Levitt's momentum going. The last 2 games really have been his best quarterbacking games, in my opinion. Even though the numbers didn't jump off the page against UCF, he played a very efficient game. If he would have turned the ball over maybe even once, that could have been the difference between a win and a loss for ASU. The Oklahoma State game, obviously, his most productive game as a quarterback at Arizona State or at the college level in any capacity. So you want to keep that going as best as possible. It's going to be a tough road environment. We talked about Kansas State at least has some relative struggles against the pass, at least in comparison to what it does against the run. So there could be some opportunities there. Now, to do that, I mean, you're just going to have to get other people involved. You know, it's great to see Jordan Tyson get these 6, 7, 8 catch games nearing 100 yards, multiple touchdowns. I mean, that is outstanding. But you certainly want to see some others step up as well. Shimon Mateer, he had an important touchdown last week. I've been pleased with his performance this year as an incoming transfer. So however it happens, whether or not you have Cam Skadoo in the lineup, I know we really haven't been harping on that topic of will he play, won't he, what's the difference if he's there. I think a lot of this is going to fall on Sam Leavitt, even if Scat's in the game.
All right, my third and final key. We'll see if we can go with 3 for 3 and matching these here. ASU, I think, has got to be +2 in the turnover margin. And I honestly think ASU probably might have a turnover or 2 in them. So I think they need like a real crooked number defensively. And we talked about, limiting the damage and ASU having to keep up with Kansas State on the road. And I think a good way and the best way and then a critical necessary way to do that is steal some possessions away. And whether it's, some corners that we've seen playing well, getting in the backfield and maybe causing some issues there, punching the ball out, whatever you got to do. I think ASU's got to be at least overall when it's all said and done +2.
So I didn't go with that. I definitely agree with that. So that's solid. So for me, I'm going to bring back an old classic and just get yourself off the field on 3rd and 4th down when you're on defense. Last week, UCF had was a combined 8 out of 16 on 3rd and 4th downs. You just can't have a 50% or higher, conversion percentage that's allowed on those downs. Many of them were, situations where UCF went on and scored on those drives. So you need to take those points off the board. So that is just further emphasized in a ball game like this against a ranked opponent on the road, a team that, both teams are still in contention for the Big 12 championship game, but that margin for error is microscopic. Like probably the team that loses this, while they won't technically, I don't think, be eliminated, the comeback trail is going to be very, very difficult. So if you're ASU, you have to keep them far away from that 50% conversion rate on 3rd and 4th downs.
All right, prediction time. I'll start things off, and man, this is going to be a real tough test. And I think in our preseason roundtable, we each had this one as we kind of went game by game as a loss. And nothing I've seen from Kansas State so far this year really kind of dissuades me from thinking, kind of the old Dennis Green, they are who I thought they were. They're a really good team that has great defense, has a really effective ground game, and Avery Johnson makes some explosive plays, even if the the consistency isn't there. ASU has really shown some good improvement on the road, although the big road win was against an Oklahoma State team that had some struggles.
And they're no good.
Yeah, and they won't use necessarily the Q word, but may have some issues on that end. But ASU beat them badly, as a good team should, against a bad team like that. Now, it's going to be very difficult for ASU to, I think, replicate that effort. Now, whether Scat plays or not, and I have a hunch that I have a feeling, as we record this on Tuesday, that he'll see some action, but obviously not 100%. Whether he does or does not, I think it'll ultimately, as talked about, it's going to be kind of, how much ASU is able to be competitive in this game is going to be on the effectiveness of Sam Leavitt. And he's got that clutch ability. We've seen him, whether it's throwing the ball, making the key runs, and feeling the pressure. It's going to be up to ASU to kind of, go blow for blow and if they can, steal some possessions. I think ASU right now, this game is a house money feel to it. Like going on the road against a top, 20 team in the playoff rankings. ASU's already checked a lot of boxes. I don't know if barring like a 55-0 blowout, I don't know that what happens if ASU's not able to get it done. It should derail any of the momentum or the positive feeling for the direction of this program. And that's good because I don't think ASU is going to come home with a win. I do think it's going to be competitive. I think there'll be some good things to grow on for the final 2 games of the season. Kansas State wins this one 30-24.
Yeah, this one for me is one of the small few games in the preseason and all throughout the season that I just looked at and just didn't love the chances, and especially the road game where I felt that sentiment. Now then, another game that before the season started I looked at and said, there ain't no way ASU's winning that. It was Utah, and that was a win. So what do I know? But Kansas State, again, playing some high-level ball. They're off a bye week. You heard about how that Houston loss kind of shook them up a little bit. Obviously took them out of the second place standing in the Big 12. So they're technically on the outside looking in as far as that Big 12 championship game is concerned. But this is still a very solid team, that knows how to play, knows how to win. They're just, like you said, they're a consistent brand that has been doing this thing for a while, and that transitioned pretty much seamlessly from Snyder to Kleiman, 5-6 years ago. So for me, it's just going to be a tough obstacle for ASU to overcome. It's going to be a really challenging road environment, for Sam Leavitt and for ASU. Quite possibly the most challenging road environment that ASU will have had all year, because that final road game, not necessarily looking like it might have the same fire and juice as it normally would, but we'll see how that transpires when we get to it. So yeah, I see ASU competing. This would be, ASU it has checked a lot of boxes that it normally doesn't check, most recent of which is winning without Cam Scadaboo. So will that next box to check be beating a top 20 team on the road? That would be an incredible one if it did. I just don't see it working out that way. So like Brad, I see a defeat for the Devils, but I also wholeheartedly agree in this house money sentiment that, yeah, barring some total embarrassment, even a loss doesn't derail you. It doesn't throw off all the momentum. It still puts you in a perfectly good spot. I mean, having 7 wins at this point, you are already playing with some house money. In the end, I see Kansas State winning this one 31-21.
All right, so hopefully we'll see if we're wrong, and ASU would surprise us all on the season that has already been incredibly full of surprises in the positive direction. That should do it for this episode of Speak of the Devils. I'd like to thank our guests Justin Wodtly, Zach Swanson, Chance Abels, and Kevin Fielder of EMAW Online. This week's game will kick off at 5 p.m. Arizona time, TV on ESPN. Make sure you stay with us on the social media side of things. As Joe mentioned, there might be some fun chances for you to guess the final score, maybe get some autographed swag. You can follow us on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, on Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube. A lot of good content there. Follow us on Facebook, and give me a follow on all things social at bdenny29.
And you can follow me at Joe Healy42. And a huge thank you to all of our wonderful sponsors, of course, including Sun Devil Family Charities, a 501c3 nonprofit organization created primarily for the purpose of raising funds to provide financial assistance to Arizona State University alumni, students, staff, and immediate family members adversely affected by medical issues. Their SDFC Cares program allows qualified individuals to request financial assistance by completing an application and submitting verification of medical expenses, which are then evaluated by their Patient Services Committee. SDFC Cares is the flagship program through which Sun Devil Family Charities provides financial assistance to qualified applicants, individuals, and their immediate family members who have an affiliation with ASU and are facing financial hardship due to a serious health or medical condition are encouraged to submit an application for assistance. Monetary donations are always appreciated and support those in need due to unexpected medical conditions. They also have volunteer and sponsorship opportunities that are available, and all of this can be found on their website online at sundevilfamily.org. Also, we encourage you to follow them on Facebook at facebook.com/SunDevilFamilyCharities and on Twitter at Sundevil_family.
All right, and once you're done supporting our amazing group of sponsors, make sure you drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe and I will be back next week to review what happened in Manhattan and look ahead to the culture clash against BYU.